A very good afternoon, and thank you so much for having taken the time to have joined our webinar today. My name is Jay and I am an identity access management expert, and I take care of security division for ManageEngine as well. So we here today have come together for this special webinar. This is a part of our IT security global webinar series, and if I'm not wrong, this is the 29th webinar that we are organizing this year. It's almost 6 months down, and we've got phenomenal response for our past webinars, and this is a favorite topic for a lot of you who are joining today. This is essentially put together based on the requests that we've had in the past, and we'll be covering ground on password security and how to essentially go about preventing password breaches. So before we get started, you early birds, thank you so much for being here now. I would quickly want to start off with an audio video check. I'm pretty sure you guys have your cup of coffee and you have your notepad ready. Before we get started, just getting the logistics out of our way, let's do a quick audio video check. If you can hear me loud and clear, I'm going to say 1 2 3. If you can hear me say 1 2 3, you can use the chat and say hi. A quick audio check before we get started with today's webinar. We are going to have an interesting session today, and I will be giving you a lot of action items to go back and implement, so I would not want any of you to miss out on any of the topics that we're discussing. A quick audio check before we get started. Oh, lovely. Thank you so much for the confirmation, guys. We are set and good to go. The audio seems to be perfectly fine. With respect to the video, let's do a quick check. If you can see my screen that says how a comprehensive password management tool can help you prevent password breaches. Oh, thank you so much. I've already got a confirmation. So the screen looks perfectly fine and the audio is also clear. So what are we waiting for? Again, thank you for taking the time. This is the ManageEngine's global webinar series for IT security. Today's agenda is quite straightforward. We'll be talking about what weak passwords can do to your organization, how to circumvent these problems, how to have a strong password policy in place, and beyond that, what do your users do? What do attackers love doing to your users, and how do they get access to your systems, and how in general will you be able to up your security a notch? So that is very much the agenda of the day. So going forward, we've got a wonderful organization right here. People in the organization seem to be super happy. Happy employee, happy organization. I'm pretty sure it seems like a normal day. Everything's going on fine. That's what you and me see. But when it comes to an attacker, the attacker does not see the same. For an attacker, all that matters is the user's behavior. All that the attacker wants to understand is, when does your user leave for a coffee? When do they go for a smoke break maybe? When, what, how? The whole pattern of a user's behavior is what an attacker is bothered about. And why exactly would they be tracking your users? Just to find out the weakest link. And essentially, like I say, the security of an organization is only as strong as the weakest link. And many a times, the weakest link in our security are our users. That being the case, it makes it very easy for an attacker to understand who does what. It's, as a matter of fact, a quick puzzle for the attacker to solve. Find out when is the user most vulnerable. That is what an attacker is looking for. And it could be something as simple as your user logging in from a coffee shop. The user could be probably hooked to the Wi-Fi that's there on the coffee shop and exposing your organization to an attacker. So you would want to, at all times, have a solution in place that is going to take into consideration all of these unpredictable elements into the picture, and then get your password security up. As a matter of fact, one striking observation that I want to share with you guys is this piece of information or this piece of infographic that Microsoft had published around the time of their conference, the Ignite conference that they organize every year. Satya Nadella went on to talk about quite a lot on password security and the whole idea of doing away with passwords. But I don't really buy the idea of passwords going away. And from whatever we've understood, passwords are not going to go away that soon. When it comes to security from the existing standpoint, let's say you are an administrator who takes care of your identity and access management. You take care of Active Directory, let's say. It's found that, in fact, this piece of information is absolutely legitimate and given by Microsoft. That being the case, it's found that within a span of just 2 days or 48 hours, once the first host is compromised, it's not going to take a long time for the attacker to reach to the domain admin account or domain admin machine. Here, we will need to understand that many a times an attacker tries to go right under the radar. They don't get noticed at all. And by the time an organization realizes that they are under an attack, enough damage would have already happened. So what do? And statistics has it. It's not just in the case of one organization. Across the world, we have statistics that tells us that it takes quite a lot of time for an organization to actually know that they are being attacked. So we've been able to find out that about 68% of organizations that were attacked took at least more than 1 full month to realize what was actually going on. And by that time, essentially, if you are an organization in the finance industry, or you have quite a lot of personally identifiable information stored, or even for that matter credit card information, enough damage is already done. The attackers don't exfiltrate data in one go. That would very much trigger a red alert, and the attacker's whole effort is going to go in vain. So they take their time, they're very patient, they laterally move. They try and have access to as many touch points as possible and then initiate their data exfiltration. So what exactly can administrators do right here? The attacker essentially cracked through a password and got in. Isn't this a major problem? Are existing security systems, are they equipped well enough to deal all of this? And in fact, what's all the more striking is the rate at which these attacks are happening over the last couple of years, and the frequency at which they are happening, and the types of attacks essentially. So you would not believe me if I tell you that phishing attacks are still the highest ones. Over years, we've had users educated about phishing attacks. We've been consistently trying to educate our users, in terms of asking them not to open a malicious looking email, not to click on a malicious looking application, not to download unnecessary attachments. But what's the first thing that a user does when he or she receives a mail from the administrator? They delete it, or they don't read them at all. So that's the biggest challenge most of the time. So how do you get your users educated? And even if you still take into consideration the uncertainty associated, how do you have a foolproof system in place is the million-dollar question. You just can't help it, because we've got situations where we've got a complex SIAM or a security solution in place that's got a machine learning algorithm, that's got artificial intelligence to detect threats and whatnot. Administrators do everything in their capability to ensure security, but we still have users who write their passwords on a piece of paper or a sticky note and have it stuck right on top of their desktop. How exactly are we going to ensure security for that? So we will need to have a system in place that is essentially foolproof. We will need to start acknowledging the fact that we are bound to be attacked. So the moment you start realizing that, it becomes all the more easy for you to adopt a solution, have a system in place that could enhance your password security. So be prepared, or I would go one step further and say, assume that you are already under an attack. If that is the case, if that's the approach that you've got towards password security or IT security in general, then the way you handle security changes exponentially. So we've got statistics through and through that tell or having attackers, it's a common thing now. There are quite a lot of benefits for an organization that implements a solution like this. I would want to go through a couple of ones quickly to start with, to tell you what exactly should you be understanding when it comes to takeovers, when it comes to being hacked. The easiest one to understand is the ATO attack. What happens? A credential is compromised. It could be a phishing attack, it could be a brute force attack, or it could essentially even be a malware that is downloaded. An account gets taken over. What's the intention of the attacker? The attacker wants to gain control over the account. They try and establish ensure that their privileges are escalated. They initially start with a quick recon, find out what's what, and then start with a targeted email attack. So you would never know. The email is going to look absolutely legitimate because it's from one of your employees. First place, we never realized that the account got compromised. First place, we did not know that security is already gone. So the attacker takes enough time to exfiltrate data. They complete their mission, and by the time they're gone, you don't even realize that they're gone. So the whole problem right here is getting ourselves equipped for this uncertainty. How do we make our users understand what could they probably be going through? So it starts with the idea of understanding an attacker's mindset. How do they go forward doing this? It's as simple as this. So an email account gets taken over. Someone impersonates to be someone else. They send out emails to probably someone who has to pay you and have a transfer wire to their personal accounts. It doesn't stop right there. Or it could be as simple as this. It need not be as complex as the previous case. It could be as simple as this. You receive an email from the Nigerian prince. Wow, have we all not heard about the famous Nigerian prince scam? On top of it, we still have a user or two trying to access this. The Nigerian prince goes on to say, "Dear friend, Happy New Year, thank you so much. I know that this message will come to you as a surprise." Oh, perfect. It is indeed a surprise. The Nigerian prince is writing to me. I am the next heir to enthrone in Nigeria, the crown prince Apara Kachiko Porong. So you get what I'm saying, right? People still fall for this, and all that the Nigerian prince has to do is to go on to say that you'll have to pay an initial $1,000 or £1,000 deposit to claim $1,000,000. There are so many people who still fall victim for this. This is how the accounts get taken over. So there are two aspects to security: one, having solutions in place, and two, being basically informed. So we are going to, at the end of this session, be sharing with you resources that you could very much pass on to your users and have them go through. They are very fun reads. Basically, we've made them in such a way that their users are not going to have a problem going through this. We're going to be giving away best practices for setting up passwords, and how do you essentially handle or tackle when you think you are being attacked, or what to essentially look for when something's going wrong. So this is very much the agenda for today's session. We'll go on to talk about this one angle for password security. We'll start with self-service. Basically, how do you get your users to use a strong password? Are you just going to ask them to use a strong password? Is that going to work? Because we've tried time and time over and it has still not worked. What we'd probably want is to establish a straightforward provision where your users get to set strong passwords. It all starts with the logon screen. We'll get there, we'll go one step further, we'll talk about setting custom password policies that cater to different needs. You'd have users belonging to different departments. One probably would be taking care of the entire IT administration. They definitely need a password policy that's much stronger than the basic. And end of the day, you'd also want to ensure that there's this right mix between usability and security. You would definitely not want to compromise the two, right? So you'd want to get into this spot where you make it simple for your users and at the same time don't compromise security. The Bit where I'd want to focus here today is essentially what all of us administrators go through day in day out, the one that pertains to AD password for shortcomings. So you start off with how Active Directory passwords are basically set. You would need to understand that Active Directory password policy is at least 20 years old, 2 decades almost. So how exactly are you going to fight or battle an attacker who's got the best sophisticated botnet working on his behalf to crack a password? Is this going to be enough? The attacker is definitely going to outrun your security because you do not have granularity in your password policy. And is there an inbuilt mechanism to check if your user's not using an easy password? People go on to make it easy for them. You can't really blame them because there's a fatigue that is associated with passwords in general. Users tend to stick to passwords that are not strong because they want to remember easy passwords. So you should have a provision, or ask yourself if your existing Active Directory password policies are configured to stop your users from using a password as simple as password at 123. How are you planning to stop that? And by the way, we are very much aware of how a brute force attack works. We are also very much aware of how a dictionary attack works. There is password spray attack. The attacks are innumerable, but how do you defend yourself from all of that? So it's not just going to be password policies, because eventually at some point in time, irrespective of how strong your password policies are, there are still chances that you could get hacked. And that's exactly why we would want you to understand that a multi-factor authentication can be your absolute redemption, can be your absolute foolproof mechanism. And that is very much going to be the idea for the session. We'll start off by understanding as to how your users generally set passwords. Most of the time, the attacker does not need to try real hard. It's as simple as asking the right questions or social engineering them to give away their passwords. That's how users are basically oriented. It's not going to be difficult given the fact that attackers are equipped with all these fancy supercomputers at their disposal to guess a password. So how do you essentially reverse engineer this against them? That is essentially what we plan to do. We would want a system in place that is essentially attack proof. You would want to start off by getting your users to understand that they can't have the same passwords for a long time. The same password can't be used over and over. The same password needs to be changed at least once in 2 months. That's a best practice. And at the same time, you'd also want your users to go through, they don't want a tough time, do they now? They'd want it to be simple, accessible, they should be guided. That's the whole idea. So if you were to be in this position where you think the native password policies are definitely stronger, I do agree. Native password policies like the domain default policies, they are strong. No, I'm actually joking. The reason is, if you were an administrator, you have quite a bit of options. You have password policies that can be implemented through GPOs. Okay, that is one for me. You have the default domain password policy. Okay, that is two for me. Right. Do I have anything else left? Oh, wait, I've got a third password policy called the fine-grained password policy. What am I supposed to do with this? Which one takes precedence? How do I determine who gets what? Which takes precedence over what? How do I get a hang of where to configure this? So this is definitely a huge shortcoming for most of the administrators. Number one, basically because it's confusing. Number two, because you don't get to do it from a single unified dashboard. There are no additional settings that let you tweak your password policy up or probably strengthen it, go beyond the basic native limitations, and kind of cripple you in multiple ways. So you would essentially want your users to be enrolled in a solution in no time. This is how it happens. So you push start from your solution, the enrollment turns on, all right, and right when they log in the next time, they'll have this one screen popping right on top of their desktops, and they'll definitely not be able to bypass this screen. They'll have to go through the screen. They enroll by answering just 2 security questions. How long is that going to take? Probably around 5 minutes at best. So you ask your users to spend just 5 minutes and you could get hold of a solution that is probably 10x stronger than your existing password policies. You can quickly enroll them. That is very much the idea, and it doesn't stop right there. We solve the problem right where it begins. Where does the problem begin? The logon screen. Your user forgets their password on the logon screen, and that's the whole reason behind them setting up a weak password. So how do you go about helping them there? You have a provision to reset the password or self unlock the account right on top of the logon screen, and it's going to be web based. It's not rocket science for your users. It is something that they do day in day out. Is self-service new to your users? If you ask yourself that question, you'd have this obvious answer: no. Do they call up Facebook or do they call up Google when they forget their passwords? They don't. All they do is answer a couple of questions, or probably do a security authentication, an OTP that gets sent to your email, some sort of validation that they are very much used to, and all of that can be done right from their login screen, from the comfort of their login screen, and it takes less than 2 minutes for them to reset their new password. So they would never, first of all, have a trouble setting a long password or a strong password, and even if they forget it, it shouldn't be a problem because you let them reset their passwords or unlock their accounts right from the logon screen. And guess what? We made it even better. What would it look like to have the entire guidelines for strong passwords right when they set their passwords right here? Because you must have definitely been there, done that sometime. You try to set a strong password, but you do not know what the password policy is because you're doing it from Active Directory, from your logon screen. You set a weak password, the system just says it's not strong enough. It never tells you what is the problem, but it always keeps telling you that something's wrong. Does it remind you of someone? So what we want is a solution that can very much give you access to a strong security foothold, at the same time giving your users also the option to know what they are getting into. As simple as that. And many times we always have this challenge, do we not? This challenge where you give priority support to your users in-house. Perfect, no problem. All your on-premise users are going to be happy with your password policies, the self-service portal, the help desk, and all that. But the major problem comes when your users on travel, when your users are road warriors, especially your sales staff. They try to hook up with any available Wi-Fi that's there. This is a big security vulnerability. Many organizations tend to expose their internal resources. They lose hold or control of their security essentially because someone was accessing some public Wi-Fi somewhere outside their country. Maybe you wouldn't really know. So you would need a security solution that could very much handle that as well. So right when your user is logging in, or when they are trying to change their password or do anything that has to do with passwords being transferred over the internet, you would want a solution that secures that. So that is exactly where ADSelfService Plus comes into the picture and gets your users to perform the exact same password management operations, be it resetting their passwords or changing their passwords or setting a new passwords or unlocking themselves. Even if they are on the go, it is going to work like magic. Your users who are on the go are going to get the exact same service as that of the users who are on your premise, and not at the cost of security, but with a great usability also in place. That's the whole deal. So self-service plus module of AD360 is the one that is going to be helping you out. So we were talking about being able to log in from the being able to reset their passwords or unlock their screens or unlock their accounts right from the logon screen. And how does this all happen? Be it them being on-prem or them being on the go, it all happens because you have a solid security mechanism in place that's letting your users communicate with your Active Directory back in your environment through this secure portal. So if you have a VPN system in place, you could very much use any of these VPN systems available. So this is All the more easier because we also let custom VPNs to be configured. Shouldn't be a problem at all. And what was the showstopper initially? So most of you must have had this in mind. What if my user still goes on to set a password that is not so strong? What do I do right there? How do I secure the password? So we are talking about a password, let's say PASSOWRD at 123. Okay, let me quickly get that password. So password at 123. It takes what, 4 days for a basic computer to crack through your password. It's not a supercomputer. If someone were to manually attack you, it's just going to take you less than 4 days to crack that. So let's talk about how to knock your security up by one extra letter. So I'm going to just add one more letter to the previous password. Okay, and this time it's going to be a special character. Okay, and there you go. It goes up in an exponential fashion. I add one more special character. It makes it 6,000 years. So that is the beauty of having long passwords. But still, if you think your system isn't your users aren't going to be setting such passwords, you can have an MFA in place, a multi-factor authentication in place. This is where you get to implement a series of solutions. How do you make it simple for your users? Can your users, right at the time of log on, use a factor like their touch on their a touch on their cell phone, or probably their face unlock? Is that going to be enough? So that is essentially going to be possible. And how? We plan to implement that right at the time of logon, and that is going to be possible with our Windows TFA and Linux TFA and Mac TFA that we've got. So we've got a couple of functionalities. Two things that you'll need to remember: how do you secure it right at the logon? How do you secure it right after they log on? So there are multiple checkpoints at every instance. So if you want an MFA in place that gets granularly assigned to different applications, so you could have restrictions for specific users. You say users from the finance department need to answer a couple of security questions before they get access to apps. You could do that. If they need to verify through an time-based OTP, you could very much do that. You have a custom multi-factor authentication that needs to be looped in, you could very much do that as well. Or my favorite is the Windows TFA, like I was telling you. How cool would it be to authenticate your users even before they log in? So they'll be able to log in right after they key in the OTP that they've received on their cell phone as a text message. So that is the beauty of it. So let's say you're an administrator, you're trying to log into your system. Or let's say I'm a hacker, I found out your password and I'm trying to log into your system. I've hacked the password, I've found it, I'm trying to log in, but wait, what? It's asking me for an email verification? No, an attacker would have never expected this. This is a total shocker for the attacker. So we are talking about the password being cracked, and that is no longer an issue because I have a second factor of authentication where I go on to enter a code that I receive over email that is absolutely personal. So this is what we are talking about, being able to knock up the security one extra level with a two-factor authentication, or the second factor happening right during logon. And this works perfectly fine for your Windows system, for your Mac systems, and for your Linux as well. So that's what we've planned. Stop the attack right where it begins. Who cares if the password is lost? Make your system impregnable with a second factor that only the user knows or owns or possesses. In this case, we suggest biometric and we suggest Face ID. That is definitely much better than a password that can be guessed. So again, this boils down to making it simple for your users. We were initially talking about complex password policies. How good would it be if your existing Active Directory password policy was capable of doing all this? So what we are offering is not a replacement to your existing password solution, but more like a upgrade to your existing password solution. So you have a set of functionalities that tackle problems like a dictionary attack right at the beginning. You can upload a couple of dictionaries that's available online. That's exactly what an attacker does. They download a dictionary from the internet. You look up for a dictionary, you get 1,000 different attacker dictionaries. We are trying to use the same attacker's logic against them. So upload a dictionary. The solution also comes with a pre-built one. You could very much use that gets updated frequently. You could use that, or if you have your own dictionary, you could do that as well, because this works when you want different languages. So that's the recommendation that we've got. Use that, and your Active Directory passwords can never have a word from the dictionary. This is a cool functionality. You're instantly ruling out an attack like a dictionary attack. And most of the cases, a brute force attack also becomes very difficult, because they also rely on common patterns, common words, and a password guessing attack is never going to happen. Your systems are not in position to guess what password the user has. So brute force attack, striked out. Password guessing attack, gone. Password spray attack is also gone, and a dictionary attack is also out of question. So likewise, you could have a couple of more extra parameters. In this case, I recommend you ask your users to use a passphrase. Solves all the problem in one go. If there's a passphrase in place, a passphrase is much stronger than a normal password. Why would I say that? Because a while back I was demonstrating how adding one extra character to your password can make it a lot more secure. Wasn't that the whole idea? So just one more special character and it makes it absolutely impossible for the password to be guessed. So think of a passphrase. A passphrase can be a combination of a couple of words. I'm going to say I love, let's say, cold beer, and I've thrown in a couple of numbers here. Okay, I've replaced letter E with 3, so that makes it almost impossible for the password to be cracked. So this is a passphrase. It's longer than a password, making it absolutely safe and secure. So we've given you both the ways. Have users to set strong passwords. If you think they're still not going to oblige, you have the option of a multi-factor authentication coming into the picture. So you've got both the options. It's absolutely up to you to use whichever one you think would work for your system. And we've also built in a couple of anti-hacking systems, notifications that get delivered right into your inbox when something strange is happening. How cool would it be if there is a notification when there are repeated logon failures? You would know how many times a user has failed trying to log in. So this is essentially a indication of a brute force attack. In less than a minute, you have probably 10 different failed logons, or let's say even 100. If it's a machine doing the brute force, you would have 100 different logon failures happening in under a minute. That is definitely a concern. So you would need to be notified, and the system lets you do that. And in fact, at every touch point where we try to secure passwords, we have basic mechanisms like a CAPTCHA in place, a session timeout in place, a provision to push all of this across platforms is what we offer. And I would want you to also do this one basic math problem. So we are talking about two things, right? One is security, two is making it easy for your users to be able to self-serve themselves. So it all boils down to improving your security and at the same time also tweaking your efficiency one bit up. We've been able to understand that on an average, an employee calls the organization or the help desk at least 20 different times. All of them are password related. And let's say your organization is 500 employees big. You get about 10,000 calls a year. Most of them are for passwords, right? So how do you get yourself rid of all these calls? What would happen if you had a solution that will help you have a single sign-on dashboard for your users, have them able to sync their passwords across platforms, have a multi-factor authentication for different applications, and also have a second factor, something as personal as a Face ID or a Touch ID, right when they log in, and all of this under one roof that does both productivity by helping your users self-serve themselves in case they forget their passwords, by giving them notifications over email and text. This is a very big security problem. Password expiry. So user accounts get locked out. Attackers try to use this opportunity. The account is inactive, they want to make use of the opportunity. So how do you remind them right when their passwords are about to expire? You have a simple free solution. You could very much have it configured for a chronology. You could have email notification sent 1 week prior. You could have email notification sent 3 days prior. So you have all the provision that you would need to be both proactive and reactive. If there's a problem, you can sort it out. Or what we'd suggest is, even before the problem comes in the picture, you have a solution that foolproofs your whole password management. We talk about multi-factor authentication. We talked about users being able to self-unlock. Doesn't matter if they're on-prem or on the go, they get the same level of usability and security. So we understand that this war against passwords is quite a difficult one because it has a lot of unpredictable elements involved. Having us by your side is definitely going to change how you go for this battle. So we'd love to help you out. If you have any specific questions with respect to password related breaches or problems, we are going to stick around for some more time to take your questions. It was lovely having you guys. You've been a wonderful audience. I hope the little information that we shared today was helpful in some way. Thank you so much.